We have more Supreme Court corruption to talk about. This is a really important story. The thing that I can't get over is just how much everybody pretends like, oh, the Supreme Court? You mean the honorable gentlemen and gentlewomen over there? The ones who are above the fray and who are incredibly intelligent. They are like our intellectual overlords, and they only make the correct decisions based on the law. This is like the mythology that has been preached to us. This idea of the independent judiciary is so important. But no, in reality, they are deeply, deeply political, even though they claim they're not. And they're corrupt. So now we know this. This is a raw story. Justice Gorsuch failed to report property sale to CEO of law firm with cases before Supreme Court. So why would this matter? Well, for those who don't understand, I think it's pretty intuitive and you can get it right away. But what do you think's going to happen in these cases? Gorsuch has a massive bias on the side of, wherever the law firm is. He has a bias in favor of their side of any case. So he's probably not going to judge it on the merits. He's probably going to judge it based on his political connections and money. This is incredibly devastating. And this is on top of the recent Clarence Thomas Supreme Court scandal, where he has a billionaire sugar daddy, and he hears cases all the time where he has a massive conflict of interest and a bias. Another Supreme Court justice failed to disclose his financial relationship with an individual with business before the court. See, if there actually were a code of ethics or these people were not absolute goblins, they would recuse themselves. Well, no, actually, I retract that. They wouldn't have taken these gifts anyway. They wouldn't have done it. Neil Gorsuch has been trying to sell a 40-acre property he co-owned in rural Colorado for nearly 2 years before Brian Duffy, the chief executive of one of the biggest law firms in the country, put it under contract exactly 9 days after Gorsuch was confirmed by the Senate in 2017, reported Politico. Wow, would you look at that? What a coincidence that timing was. I'm sure it wasn't pay-to-play corruption. He and his wife closed on the house a month later, paying $1.825 million, according to a deed in the county's record system, reported Politico correspondent Heidi Presbilla. Gorsuch, who held a 20% stake, reported making between $250,000 and $500,000 from the sale on his federal disclosure forms. Gorsuch did not disclose the identity of the purchaser. The box was left blank. Gee, I wonder why. Couldn't be because he's trying to hide his obvious pay-for-play corruption, is it? The firm Duffy leads, Greenberg Trorig, has been involved in at least 22 cases before or presented to the Supreme Court since buying that 3,000 square foot log home and mountainous land from the justice, although Duffy says he has never argued a case before Gorsuch or met him socially. Quote, I've never spoken to him. Sure. I've never met him. Sure. By the way, this is how pernicious this stuff is. I just want everybody to understand this. The way it works in our legal system is in order to prove corruption, there has to be what's called a quid pro quo, which is basically like, I will now give you the money and you will do X favor for me. Fill in the blank with whatever X is. That's quid pro quo corruption. Now, the reason why that standard is absurd is because in most instances, the corruption is implied, right? So if you just buy the house and you just let him get away with a $500,000 profit or whatever it is, you just do that, you don't say anything. It's implied, right? Oh yeah, when that case gets in front of the court and I'm on that side, it's implied, hey man, I did you a solid, you gonna do me a solid? And also, to one extent or another, this is human nature, right? If I scratch your back, you scratch mine. Somebody does a solid for you, you're gonna want to do a solid for them back in return. In fact, if that's not the case, you're kind of sociopathic. Now, in most instances in life, I scratch your back, you scratch mine is totally fine. But when it comes to politics and people who are supposed to be above this tit for tat, pay to play corruption type stuff, it's terrible. Because his job is supposed to be, decide cases based on the Constitution, based on the law, be objective. You are, by definition, no longer objective with this sort of conflict of interest. So, by the way, I don't even believe him when he says I never spoke to him, I've never met him. But even if it were true, that doesn't change the nature of the case at all here. Duffy, a longtime Colorado resident, said he had been looking for a property with access to fly fishing waterways for many years, and he insists he did not know Gorsuch was one of the owners when he made his first offer. I totally do not believe that, not even a little bit. Quote, the fact that he was going to be a Supreme Court justice was... Jesus, what's with all these ads? These ads are super fucking annoying. The fact that he was going to be a Supreme Court justice was absolutely irrelevant to the purchase of that property, Duffy said. It's a wonderful piece of property, and we're so glad we bought it. Gorsuch has sided with Greenberg Trorig clients 8 times and against them 4 times in the 12 cases where his opinion is recorded, including a case where he joined the other 5 conservative justices in agreement with a Greenberg client who challenged a Barack... This thing needs to go away. Why is this thing still in my way? There we go. Including a case where he joined the other 5 conservative justices in agreement with a Greenberg client who challenged a Barack Obama measure to fight climate change by regulating carbon emissions from power plants. Quote, we have seen a steady stream of revelations regarding Supreme Court justices falling short of the ethical standards expected of other federal judges and of public servants, said Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Dick Durbin. The need for Supreme Court ethics reform is clear, and if the court does not take adequate action, Congress must. The Senate Judiciary Committee will be closely examining these matters in the coming weeks. Okay, so let me point out this for you guys. It was sort of implied here, but just so everybody understands. The way it works with lower federal courts, there is a code of ethical standards that they have to abide by. With the Supreme Court, there's no code of ethical standards. It's astonishing. The higher you get up the ladder, the fewer rules there are. So you have free reign, do whatever you want, and it's the honor system, basically. You know, oh, just trust me. I got this. They need a code of ethics, absolutely. And I would get rid of the lifetime appointments for sure. Now, Durbin saying these things, okay, so he's nominally on the right side, but I'm gonna add to this in just a second here. He's not really doing his job right. You're about to see he's not really doing his job right. Durbin has asked Chief Justice John Roberts to testify next month before his committee on the court's ethics rules following revelations of Justice Clarence Thomas's undisclosed financial relationship with billionaire Republican donor Harlan Crow. So here's what I just referenced. This was in Politico. Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Dick Durbin says he didn't invite Justice Clarence Thomas to testify regarding ethics because he thought Thomas would ignore the invitation. So he didn't even try to get Clarence Thomas to testify when he's like the heart of the corruption scandal. Now, by the way, Clarence Thomas has since sent a letter where he was like, yeah, I'm not really feeling it. We have separation of powers, so that means I get to do what I want. No, the whole point of separation of powers is that so we have checks and balances, which is the exact opposite of how you're interpreting it. The separation of powers doesn't mean I get to get away with whatever I want, even if it's wrong. Separation of powers is, if I do something wrong, there's another branch of government that will check my ass. But Clarence Thomas just flipped the meaning of that to be like, no, I'm busy. I'm not going to come. This is a nothing matter. So no, it is definitely not a nothing matter. Clarence Thomas didn't recuse himself from a 2004 appeal tied to Harlan Crow's family business. What a surprise. What a surprise. So yes, he's got a billionaire sugar daddy. Crystal and I covered this previously. You guys know the deal. He was basically taking these glorious, luxurious vacations using his properties. And it clearly pay-to-play corruption. This guy has business before the court all the time. Look, if there's one thing you take away from this segment, it's this. Do not buy the BS that these are just honorable gentlemen who are above the fray, who are simply reading the Constitution and interpreting it plainly and adjudicating fairly. That is not what it is. The court is deeply, deeply political. They have their own biased interpretations of what the law should be. But also, now there's another layer to it. They're corrupt. They're just as corrupt as the House and the Senate, who raise their money for their campaigns from corporations, from billionaires, and then they serve said corporations and billionaires. It's the same thing on the Supreme Court. And it's even more brazen for the Supreme Court because at least when it comes to the House and the Senate, they have the nominal argument of like, what do you mean? We have to raise money to run for office. So what do you want me to do? Well, what I want you to do is only raise small dollar donations. That's the principled way to do it, right? But at least they have that to fall back on. Like, I have to raise money, right? I got to run for office. These guys have lifetime appointments. They don't need to do any of this. They're choosing to do it. Because at corruption in Washington, D.C., it's like asking a fish, hey, how's the water? They'd be like, what do you mean? I don't understand what you mean. That's how these guys are. They're corrupt by their nature, They're acting in the system that exists, and they don't think anything of it at all. And then when you bring this up to them, like, hey man, that's corrupt. Hey man, that's pay to play. Hey man, you shouldn't be doing that. Hey man, this is fucking evil. They're shocked. Like, oh, what do you mean? Don't besmirch my legacy. Your legacy is certainly not what you think it is. Your legacy is, and guys, it's a sad thing, right? Like, I wish we could have trust and faith in these institutions, because I think in the long run, it's very important to have institutions that work and have trust from the people in those institutions. That's the only way you can secure the long-term viability of a country, is to have good institutions and have people trust them. But that's not where we are. And so the solution is not to turn a blind eye to it or let them get away with whatever they want. The solution is to create the institutions that are trustworthy. And you got to clean house. You need a code of ethical standards. You need to have term limits for the people on the Supreme Court. There's a million things we could think of. I would do court stripping and have many issues where the court can't even weigh in on it because they're flat out undemocratic by their very nature. Call it what it is, judicial tyranny. They get veto power on anything our representatives do, even when our representatives are siding with us, the people. No. So, I mean, we gotta redo the system. I want to create institutions that are trustworthy. They're certainly not trustworthy right now. All right, guys, that's the show. I love you all very much. Everybody do me a big favor. Click like, click subscribe, click that little bell icon so you get a notification every single time a video drops. There's like tens of thousands of you, maybe hundreds of thousands of you that watch the channel but don't subscribe. Hook a brother up with a little subsies. Just click it. It takes 2 seconds. Doesn't cost you anything. It's all good. It's all good. And remember, you could always listen to the full shows on Spotify. We post the full audio podcast on Spotify. Every single day there's a show. A bunch more people are now choosing that option, so that option is always available to you guys now. And much love to everybody who supports this show on Patreon. You guys make it work. Remember, I've never had a conversation with an advertiser. I never will. You guys always make the show function. So if you could donate $2 a month, $5 a month, whatever, links in the video description box below. And same with Crystal Kyle and Friends on Substack. If you pay $5 a month over there, what you do is get the video of the interviews and you get it a day early. You also get our newsletters. And you can even sign up for free on Substack, and then you'll get the audio podcast dropped to you as soon as Crystal Kyle and Friends drops, usually on Saturdays. All right, I love you guys. I will talk to you later. Everybody have a great rest of your day. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.